Hello, my name's Jorb. I love gear, and I lied. I'm just getting back from Los Angeles. My plan was to just go to Buchla and Friends, but I find myself at a place I swore I would never go back to. NAMM. I've been to NAMM before. I went in 2019. I did not like it. It's huge, it's loud, it's expensive. There's not even that much synth stuff, certainly not getting announced now that we have Super Booth. I swore I would never go again, but this year, once I was in LA, just to go to Buchla and Friends, I saw some of the things announced at NAMM, and then I had one final push from the Honorable Robert Beats, thank you, Bo, and I bought a badge, and I took a 2-hour train to get there, and I still didn't love it that much, but I did see some stuff, so you're going to see me sort of quickly break down the stuff I saw at NAMM for one day and Buchla and Friends for one day. If it sounds good, stick around, subscribe, like the video. Affiliate links are in the description. That helps me a ton. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's start. I did NAMM on Saturday. I spent a lot of time at the Korg booth because they had a bunch of stuff that, even if it isn't super new, I just hadn't tried it yet. And the first thing I tried, the Mikrokorg 2. I didn't get any audio of it because I wasn't playing anything interesting. And I totally recognize that this is not an optimal environment for somebody to sit and learn a new instrument, but I just didn't like it very much. The screen and knobs being aligned was good, the sort of Electron idea, you know what I mean, of you'll have these knobs and there'll be a parameter sort of representing each of them on the panel. That was good, that made sense, but there were so many things that went deeper that I needed explained or, couldn't figure out at face value that I just wasn't nailing it. And I don't want to be an old head, but when we look at the original, once you know how to navigate it, every parameter is listed on the front panel. So if you don't know where something is, you can literally look and find it. And maybe you'll see something, you'll scan the panel, wonder what keyword tracking is or whatever, and then go check it out. That's a cool thing for a beginner to have access to. And I didn't really feel that on the Mark II. It was, a modern sort of menu divey experience. So maybe I'm wrong, but it didn't feel like using the original Mikrokorg. That was my first impressions with not that much time and honestly not getting anything that cool out of it. That being said, I like the sort of layout of the engine. I like the digital wave. I think the effects all sounded good. That's really it. I was just curious to try it. Next, one of the things that I really, really wanted to try that made me buy a NAMM badge, the Minkorg 700S Mini. You might notice halfway through this demo, I point the camera up at a group of people, and between towering security guards, you might notice the back of someone's head. That is Stevie Wonder. That was crazy, and I'm using his presence as an excuse to why I wasn't playing very good. But there were controls I didn't figure out. I'm getting ahead of myself, but they did a full-size Minkorg. They called it the FS, just like the ARP Odyssey, and you get a mini key version not that much later. I like when old stuff gets a new life. I like what I heard. I like when old stuff gets a new life. It's cool that Korg is doing that. The Odyssey, the 2600, and now this. And this was a sort of I don't know that much about the Minkorg, really, what it was used on or who liked them or whatever. And I liked the sounds of it, but the terminology was more idiosyncratic than the Odyssey or even the 2600, really. Even just as simple as the controls are organ drawbars down is more. That took me a second to figure it out. You can probably hear it, but there's glide. I never figured out how to turn the glide off on one of the oscillators or maybe from the keyboard control. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know what, parameter could control that. And I'm not new to this stuff at all. In fact, I probably have learnt a new synthesizer, you know what I mean, more often than most people. And I couldn't figure it out. That's just because it's old and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I love that Korg is doing stuff like this, old school designs with a modern factory and modern features. That's cool. Here that included presets even, which is a cool addition, especially for something with these sort of idiosyncratic controls. So yeah, I'm happy it exists. I think it's a little bit expensive, but just like a lot of the Korg stuff, I'll wait for a blowout on the US distributor or it'll just get cheaper on the used market. That happened with the Odyssey and the 2600. And you know what? I'm going to go out of order a little bit. This is something I tried way later, but I had that same impression, I'm glad this exists, but I think it's too expensive. They're redoing the Rhodes. The Rhodes name exists with a new group of people who are making modern electric pianos. That's awesome. And they're doing a 61 key. That's exciting to me specifically. I've been trying to buy a smaller Rhodes for a while. The 54 key Rhodes is in my dreams, So seeing this smaller version of the modern ones, I was perfect. The full-size one, 73 keys, they have like a new preamp in it. I think those are like 10 grand. I think they start at like 10 grand. So it was like out of the question. Like I'm happy they exist, but I'm never going to buy it, right? So when they said, here's a smaller one, it's going to be more affordable, no preamp, no effects, just like the passive electromechanical sound generation. I was excited. I sat down and tried it. I asked pricing. Whoever was working the booth said they were thinking $7,000, and it like truly deflated me because I'm not going to buy that, and I don't think it'll ever be cheap enough on the used market for me to end up with one. So, back to vintage ones. Even a refurbished vintage one won't be the same, of course. But if you're excited about an electromechanical piano, aren't you excited about the vintage stuff anyway? So if you ask me, like, get a refurbished one from someplace like Chicago Electric Piano. They do great work. That's a full 73 keys even. Or Vintage Vibe makes a modern piano that I think is a little bit cheaper. They have something called variable voice control, which is like an actual advancement on some of this tech, not just a fancier preamp and fancy effects, or, the Steinway keybed. Doesn't mean a lot to me. It might mean a lot to you. But anyway, yeah, that was sort of the same impression of like, I'm happy this exists, but it's so expensive, like, for what it is, I don't think it'll happen. So yeah, I'm like still kind of confused by the way that the new Rhodes are coming out, the new electric pianos are coming out. I can't imagine most of the people I know who make music not just getting an old one, or getting an old one that's in bad shape and fixing it, or it's strange. I don't know who it's for other than studios who like make proper money, but maybe I'm just too small time to understand it. Anyway, still in the Korg booth, back to the Korg booth, I guess. The multi-poly. I had seen this announced, and I haven't been so plugged in recently. I haven't been paying attention the way I was, but it's like Korg's sort of be-all, end-all virtual analog option. A bunch of like specific models for its filters, its envelopes, and VCAs. And I guess what I mean by that, you can pick a model for the filter that's like specifically the monopoly, or the mini-log, or the SEM, or the Prophet. There's a bunch of them. And same thing for like envelope curves, which is awesome. I don't want to break the magic, but in my notes, I have the whole voice architecture. I wrote it down. It's 4 oscillators, plus noise, 2 filters, 4 envelopes, 5 LFOs, motion sequencing, and digital effects. That's one layer, okay? You can have all of that 4 times over. And you can play them all simultaneously, as separate layers. As a round robin, like the monopoly, you can blend between the layers with like an XY pad or expression. It's crazy deep. It's that like, I guess I should highlight the monopoly. Clearly that's where the name is coming from. But instead of the monopoly where the oscillators can be different and the octave they're in, the footage can be different, it's like the whole synth architecture. That's crazy. It almost feels like, I don't know, VSTs, Serum or Vital, right? You know what I mean? Where you have just tons and tons of options like those multi-layer VSTs. But it's hardware. Not analog at all, virtual analog, but it sounded really good. And I didn't really know what I would think about it, you know what I mean? I just kind of saw it and thought, Korg was doing something else weird, but this makes a lot of sense. I like virtual analog stuff. One of the ways I like, okay, I'm sitting at something new, I just want to evaluate it, have an impression of it. I sit down and I just listen to the filters. I like get new initialized patch, I just do some filter sweeps, and they sounded good to hear. All the models sounded good. Of course, can't speak to how accurate they are or whatever, but this wasn't appealing to me until I sat down and tried it, and now I really see the vision. I think I can visualize a lot of live setups where somebody will do a ton of tweaking at home in the studio and have tons of different sounds ready to go. I wasn't at NAMM for that long, so one last thing I saw at NAMM was the Melbourne Instruments MIDI controller. What was the name? Roto Control, maybe? The Melbourne Instruments Roto Control. It's the same motorized faders from Delia and what's the other one? Nina, I think. But it's an 8-knob MIDI controller with motorized faders. So they can change their position on their own. Maybe you're using it to control 2 different groups of 8 parameters for 2 different synthesizers, 2 pieces of hardware. Maybe you're going through pages, in your DAW, and controlling a bunch of different effects. To have physical controls that will, always represent is a great touch. And it might seem trivial, right? But if the parameter would be like super jarring, like if it's a level of something, if it's a resonance, whatever, and you jump to this new value that's way too high or way too low, it could ruin a moment, it could ruin a performance. So to have them adjust like that is super cool. From Melbourne Instruments' perspective, hey, we have this tech for these rotary controls, these motorized controls. It's an interesting way to put that in a smaller price point. From our perspective, users of this stuff, it seems like it can solve a lot of problems and it can work for a lot of people. We've seen motorized like long throw faders, but not knobs like this. It's space saving and it feels less sort of like upper echelon and blah blah blah. I'm not sure what the price is on that, but I'll put that up now. That's probably going to make or break it, isn't it? Anyway, we're shifting now. We're leaving Anaheim. We're on our 2.5-hour bus. We're headed back to, I think, Silver Lake. I'm not from LA. And we're going to Buchla and Friends. It's smaller, more focused, almost only synthesizers, but all synthesizer sort of Eurorack adjacent. The stuff we like, drum machines as well, I guess. I haven't been before. The event was free. It's happened for a few years now, and I hope it continues to grow. I really, really like the feeling of it. And I really spent most of my time there talking to people and not recording demos. So a few things to mention that I just have talked about before in a KnobCon video, I think. The Musonics Vanilla synthesizer, my friend Suit and Tie Guy. It's a sort of deconstructed Moog format Oberheim 2-voice. It sounds super, super good every time. Always happy to see it. If you really want to hear me talk about it and some sounds, check out the KnobCon video. And there was the GS Music Brie 6 from the same folks as the E7. I think that's about as cool as you can get for a small company making a modern polysynth. I loved both of those. And same thing, KnobCon video if you really want to hear about it. But something I had seen and really wanted to try, and I'm so glad that I did, was the Dreadbox Artemis. It is a 6-voice analog synthesizer. Dreadbox has done small 6-voice analogs. If you remember the Nymphus, this is sort of feels like a more developed idea. It's definitely just different. There's some design choices and architecture decisions, I guess, that make it feel more like a polyphonic Typhon than it did like a Nymphus all grown up. And the demo unit I sat down with was plugged into a Rolly C board. I was not ready for that. So forgive my playing, but I love the sounds and I like the control. I like polysynths, I like a mod matrix, I like built-in effects, and it really nailed it. And it really nailed it. It's hard to... I really don't have anything else that specific to say. Well, I guess the oscillator control was this macro control. So it was every pair of... Gosh, I can't even remember, a sawtooth and a square between the two oscillators as you just blended between instead of switches. I thought that was a cool way to streamline it and a modulatable thing that becomes really, really functional. So yes, of all the things I'm talking about, that's something I will probably get my hands on, probably do a video on, because I like Dreadbox and I like small polysynths like that. Awesome. Dreadbox, hit me up. Okay, something else. It was called the Katla. I didn't get any audio because it doesn't feel like it's close to finished to me. It's a sort of... It also took some sort of cues from the monopoly. It was 5 separate voices that could be... stacked or layered. The architecture impressed me. The sound, I wouldn't say necessarily stood out to me at that moment, and I know there's still not sure about some parts of the filter or whatever, so... I guess not that much else to say. It's an interesting idea, and one thing that stood out to me was you could have a preset for just the oscillator controls or just the envelope controls or whatever, whichever rows. I thought that was a really clever design choice. Those two things together is sort of monopoly, 5 separate things, and the row presets impressed me. But I don't think it's quite close to done yet. I'll just link to the website. You can follow along as they develop this. But it was one of the few things that I hadn't seen before that really caught my eye. Again, I really like polysynths. And something I had seen, talked about and announced, and I just hadn't gotten a chance to try was Quord from Soundworkshop. same creator as the Wiggler. This is Quord. It's like a drone synthesizer, 4 oscillators into 1 filter, an LFO that can be to the filter or like offset the mixer. It like pushes it into a sort of overdriving tremolo. Really, really cool. No envelopes or anything. You just open up the mixer, you just open up the VCA on each oscillator separately. So it's pretty cool. You have your own, there is a fader for level and a fader for pitch of every oscillator, and playing it is sort of balancing the levels, tuning by ear, finding chords, finding harmonies. You know, there's a beat frequency here that I like, but only if I bring the level down. It's this cool sort of, let's change that, let's try this, let's change that, let's try this. I didn't think I would like it as much as I did. I thought it was just going to be something I was impressed by, you know, in terms of sort of design and idea. But as an instrument, I think it could be really, really fun. That is actually it. There's nothing else I wrote down notes for. There's nothing else I got footage of. That is everything I took notes for. That is everything I got footage of. If you're a regular viewer, you're probably like, you know, George's been pretty quiet for a while. I don't have a great explanation other than I'm struggling to sort of find my voice. I'm struggling to find my mojo. I keep scrapping projects and not liking the music I'm making and changing my mind about what's worth talking about. And yeah, just like sort of generally having a tough time feeling good enough about any work to put it out. So this was an attempt to sort of find my mojo again, to be around people who are creative and work hard and I find inspiring, just to see what other people are, you know, figuring out on their own. But yes, I've been struggling a little bit with my role, like as an advertising wing for companies a little bit. And I just need to focus on what I am very proud of. I'm proud of enabling creativity for other people. I'm proud of showcasing, you know, these tools and teaching people how to use them better. And that's it. This was a somewhat successful attempt to sort of reignite my excitement for what's coming and what I can do and how to be a part of this whole scene. So I'm really grateful for all the people who said hi and all the people who said they appreciated my work. That always does mean a lot, and to see people I look up to. And, you know, it's the one time a year, one of the few times a year where I feel like I actually have coworkers. You know, I get to talk to people who kind of do similar things or same things, and what worked for you, what didn't work for you, how do you handle this? It's really, really nice to just sort of have those conversations, especially in person, which I really don't get ever. Anyway, there you go. I rambled too much. My name's Jorb. I love gear. Appreciate you watching. Cheers and so long.